You served your country, showed up when it counted, and earned every single benefit you were promised. But what if I told you that after a certain age, those hard-earned benefits can start to disappear, and not because of anything you did wrong? Every year, thousands of veterans are blindsided when they realize their disability compensation, pension, or healthcare access is suddenly reduced, reevaluated, or worse, terminated. And the most shocking part? In many cases, they never even saw it coming. It's not just about budget cuts or clerical errors. It's about silent rules, outdated systems, and little-known regulations that kick in once you cross a certain age line, sometimes 55, sometimes 67. And if you're not paying close attention, you could lose out on benefits you spent decades earning. This isn't fear-mongering. These are real situations happening to real veterans right now. In this video, we're breaking down 10 shocking reasons veterans lose their benefits after reaching a certain age. These aren't just rumors. They're hidden pitfalls buried in policy fine print and shaped by recent VA trends. If you or someone you care about is a veteran nearing retirement or already there, this might be the most important information you hear all year. Stick with us until the end, because some of these reasons are going to catch you off guard. And once you know what to look for, you'll be in a much stronger position to protect yourself, your benefits, and your future. Let's get into it. One of the most overlooked reasons veterans start losing benefits as they age is something that sounds harmless at first: routine reevaluations. These are check-ins to VA schedules to reassess your condition, usually tied to your age or how long you've been receiving disability. On paper, they're meant to keep the system fair. But in reality, they can cost you everything if you're not prepared. Here's what most veterans don't realize. The VA can reduce or terminate your benefits if they believe your condition has improved, even slightly. And the older you get, the more likely they are to assume that you've stabilized, especially if you've stopped seeking regular treatment. That's a dangerous assumption, because many chronic conditions don't just go away with time. They get harder to manage. But if there's no paper trail showing continued symptoms or ongoing care, the VA might use that gap as evidence that you've recovered. Let's say you were rated for PTSD or a back injury 10 years ago. You've learned to manage it, maybe even stop going to therapy or seeing a specialist. Then, out of nowhere, a notice arrives for a reevaluation. You assume it's just paperwork until your rating drops from 70% to 10%. Just like that, your monthly payments are slashed, your access to care is reduced, and your financial stability is shaken. This happens more than people think. Veterans get caught off guard, and by the time they appeal, they've already lost months, sometimes years, of support. And the worst part? The VA doesn't need a major medical event to justify a change. Even a vague note from a contractor claiming no significant symptoms observed can lead to a downgrade. So if you're over 55 or have had the same rating for years, don't get comfortable. Stay active in your treatment. Keep records. And don't assume silence means safety, because the VA is always watching for signs that your condition has improved, whether you agree with it or not. Another silent benefit killer that creeps in with age is misunderstanding how your income affects eligibility for certain VA programs, especially when it comes to needs-based benefits like VA pension or aid and attendance. Many veterans assume that once they qualify, they're locked in for life. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Your benefits can be reduced or even cut off entirely if your financial situation changes, even slightly. For example, let's say you pick up a part-time job after retirement or start receiving distributions from a retirement account. Maybe your spouse gets Social Security benefits or you inherit a modest amount from a relative. If you don't report that change, or worse, if you assume it won't count, the VA can come back months or years later, recalculate your eligibility, and not only stop your benefits, but demand repayment. It doesn't end there. Some veterans unknowingly disqualify themselves just by owning assets they didn't realize counted, like savings over threshold, rental property, or even a vehicle that's not considered essential. And when the VA audits your finances, they won't just look at your recent statements. They can dig years back, flag anything questionable, and accuse you of misreporting, even if it was an honest mistake. It's especially risky for veterans who transition into assisted living or rely on caregivers. A well-meaning family member might help manage finances or restructure assets, not realizing it could make you ineligible for certain aid. Suddenly, the monthly support you were relying on disappears, and the bills don't. The bottom line, VA financial eligibility rules are stricter than most people think. And the older you get, the more likely your financial picture is to shift in ways that trigger red flags. That's why every veteran receiving needs-based VA benefits should routinely double-check their income, assets, and spending reports. Because the VA isn't going to remind you to update your info, but they will penalize you if it's wrong. One of the most overlooked and shocking reasons veterans lose their benefits as they age is failing to keep up with required medical evidence, especially for ongoing disability compensation. You might think, well, I was awarded my rating years ago and nothing's changed. But here's the kicker. Just because your condition hasn't improved doesn't mean the VA won't challenge it. In fact, the older you get, the more likely they are to reevaluate it. This happens it gets even more frustrating. As you age, many chronic conditions naturally worsen. Pain becomes harder to manage, mobility decreases, and new complications emerge. But if you're not proactively updating your file with new doctor reports, test results, or treatment summaries, the VA assumes things are stable or improving. In their eyes, silence looks like recovery. Then there's the issue of documentation gaps. Older veterans often switch doctors, move into assisted care, or stop going to specialists as frequently. Medical records get scattered, missing, or incomplete. The VA doesn't chase down missing paperwork. They just evaluate what's in front of them. If your file lacks recent, detailed medical evidence that clearly shows your ongoing limitations, you're at risk. And most don't realize it until the checks stop coming. There's also a psychological factor at play. Many older veterans don't feel like they're complaining or chasing paperwork in their 70s or 80s. Some stop going to appointments simply because they're tired. But the VA system isn't built on good faith. It's built on documentation. If it's not in the file, it didn't happen. Harsh, but true. The key takeaway here, age doesn't protect you from benefit reductions. In fact, it can increase the risk unless you're actively defending your rating with consistent, updated medical evidence. Whether that means getting a new CNP exam, gathering physician letters, or working with a claims advocate, don't assume the VA will just know you're still struggling. You have to show them. Another shocking reason veterans lose their benefits after a certain age is tied to something most never even question: assumptions about permanence. Many believe that once a disability rating is deemed permanent, it's locked in for life. But here's the truth. Unless your rating is clearly marked as both permanent and total PNT, it's still open to review, even decades later. This misunderstanding causes countless older veterans to let their guard down. They stop tracking their symptoms, skip medical appointments, and assume the VA won't revisit their file. But if your rating doesn't explicitly state that it's both permanent and total, it can be reduced, especially if the VA decides to reevaluate due to age-related changes or lapses in documentation. And the VA does review cases, particularly when they suspect that aging rather than service-connected disability is now responsible for your symptoms. For example, if you were rated for chronic back pain in your 50s and are now in your 70s, the VA may argue that your current pain is due to natural aging, not the original injury. Without current, specific medical evidence proving otherwise, they can lower or remove your rating entirely. The danger is subtle. You may not even notice the red flags. It could start with a letter requesting a routine review or an update on your condition. Many brush it off, but ignoring that request or responding without strong, up-to-date evidence can trigger a downward spiral in your benefits. Bottom line, never assume your rating is untouchable just because time has passed. If you're unsure whether your benefits are truly permanent and total, review your award letter or speak with a qualified VSO. Because when it comes to your VA benefits, clarity is everything, and assumptions can cost you. One of the most overlooked reasons veterans lose their benefits after a certain age is simple but devastating: not responding to VA correspondence. As you get older, it's easy to miss a letter, misplace paperwork, or forget to respond to a request. But in the VA's eyes, silence equals noncompliance, and that can be enough to trigger a reduction or termination of your benefits. The VA routinely sends out letters asking for updated medical evidence, income verification, or confirmation that your condition hasn't improved. Sometimes they're labeled as routine future exams. Other times, they look like harmless questionnaires. But if you toss them aside or miss the deadline, even accidentally, the VA assumes you're no longer eligible or willing to verify your need for benefits. Take a veteran named Tom. At 72, he had a 70% rating for PTSD and had been stable for years. One day, a letter arrived requesting confirmation of his treatment status. It didn't seem urgent, so he set aside. Weeks passed, and he forgot about it. 2 months later, his payment stopped. When he called the VA, they told him his benefits were discontinued due to failure to provide requested documentation. He had to start the appeal process from scratch. This happens more than people realize, especially as memory lapses, health issues, or life stress get in the way. Older veterans often don't check their mail daily or may not fully understand what's being asked of them. And if you've never had to deal with the VA's bureaucracy in decades, one letter can feel confusing or unimportant. But here's the rule. Any communication from the VA deserves immediate attention. Even a delay of a few days can make a difference. If you're not sure how to respond, reach out to a VSO or representative for help. Ignoring VA mail is never harmless. And in some cases, it's all they need to justify cutting off what you've earned. Another shocking reason veterans lose their benefits after a certain age has nothing to do with their health. It's about their marital or financial status quietly triggering unexpected reviews. As veterans get older, they often experience life changes like marriage, divorce, or entering assisted living. Divorce can also cause issues for veterans receiving benefits for a spouse or dependent child. Those additions must be promptly updated when the relationship status changes. If not, the VA can claw back overpayments years later, often with interest. In some heartbreaking cases, veterans in their 70s or 80s are suddenly notified they owe thousands due to an unreported change that happened 5 or 10 years ago. And here's another layer. Income from things like Social Security, annuities, or inherited retirement accounts can suddenly disqualify veterans from pension benefits, even if they received them for years. The VA periodically cross-references your records with IRS and Social Security data. One spike in income can trigger a retroactive review. Bottom line, life changes matter. If you're getting older and something shifts in your household, your finances, or your living arrangements, assume the VA needs to know. Being proactive isn't just smart. It might be the only thing standing between you and losing benefits you come to depend on. One of the most surprising reasons veterans lose their benefits after a certain age isn't due to anything they did wrong. It's because of outdated or incomplete medical documentation. As veterans grow older, some assume their service-connected conditions are locked in, especially if they've been receiving benefits for years. But that assumption can lead to devastating consequences when the VA decides it's time for a reevaluation. Here's how it happens. The VA has the legal authority to review and reduce benefits if they believe a veteran's condition has improved. These reviews can be triggered by something as simple as a missed appointment, an outdated CNP exam, or even an innocently worded statement in a routine checkup. And if the VA can't find current, compelling evidence that your condition still meets the criteria, it may decide to reduce or terminate your benefits. This hits older veterans especially hard. Many aren't going to doctors often, or they're relying on Medicare providers who may not document symptoms in a way that supports a VA claim. Worse, some veterans stop tracking symptoms altogether, thinking the VA already knows my condition. But the truth is, if your file doesn't tell the full story in VA language, symptom severity, frequency, and impact on daily living, you're at risk. And the clock isn't always on your side. When the VA sends a letter requesting updated evidence and you miss the deadline, whether due to illness, confusion, or simply not checking your mail, it can result in an automatic reduction. Reversing that decision later is far harder than preventing it in the first place. If you're a veteran over 65, don't assume your file is solid just because time has passed. Keep your documentation current. Schedule regular evaluations. Ask your doctors to write clear, VA-friendly notes. Because when it comes to preserving your benefits, silence isn't safety. It's a setup for loss. Another hidden threat to your benefits after a certain age is assuming your rating is protected when it's not. Many veterans believe that once they've held a rating for several years, it can't be touched. But the truth is, protections like the 5-, 10-, and 20-year rules only apply under specific conditions, and the VA can still legally reduce or sever benefits if those conditions are met. For example, the 10-year rule prevents the VA from severing service connection, but only if there's no evidence of fraud. The 20-year rule protects your rating level, but again, only if it's been in place for the entire 20 years without interruption. Missed exams, claims closed due to inactivity, or even a temporary reduction can restart that clock. Many older veterans unknowingly trigger reviews by filing new claims, not realizing it opens their entire file to scrutiny. And when that happens, if your symptoms don't match the rating anymore, reductions can follow. So before assuming your rating is safe, double-check the details. Know exactly how long you've held it, under what conditions, and whether you've done anything that might reset the protection timeline. Because one small misunderstanding can lead to a big, unnecessary loss. One of the most overlooked reasons veterans lose benefits after a certain age is failing to respond to VA letters or deadlines, and it happens more often than you'd think. As we age, it's easy to miss paperwork, forget appointments, or assume a letter is just another routine update. But the VA doesn't always follow up. If they send a request for updated medical evidence, a scheduled CNP exam, or clarification on a condition, and you don't respond on time, they can reduce or even terminate your benefits. What's worse, these letters often come with vague language or tight deadlines, and if you're dealing with cognitive decline, medical issues, or limited access to transportation, it can be easy to slip up. But the VA views a no-show or no response as non-compliance. That's why it's critical to keep your contact information updated. Check your mail regularly, and if possible, assign someone you trust to help manage VA correspondence. Missing one letter might not seem like a big deal, but it could be the start of losing everything you've earned. Another surprising reason veterans lose benefits after a certain age is assuming that once you're rated, your benefits are guaranteed for life. But here's the truth. Unless your rating is marked as permanent and total, it can still be reviewed, reduced, or even removed altogether.